Hello! Continuing with our bond analysis, let's introduce the basic characteristics or features of bonds. These are the bond issuer, which is the borrowing entity, the bond's maturity date, the par value of the bond's coupon rate and the frequency or periodicity within which coupons are paid, and finally the currency in which the bond's promised payments will be made. In the current and following videos, we will delve into each of these features individually. Starting off with bond issuers, the type of entities that issue bonds to borrow funds are corporations, and we often distinguish issues by financial companies from issues by non-financial companies. An example of a financial company, the US bank JP Morgan Chase, and an example of a non-financial company, Apple. Sovereign governments, in other words national governments, also issue bonds to borrow money. For example, German Bunds, which is the name of German government-issued bonds, are issued by the Bundesbank, which is Germany's central bank. Non-sovereign governments are another type of issuer. Non-sovereign governments are government entities that are not sovereign national governments. For example, the state of Texas is a non-sovereign government. The same holds true for any state in the United States. In the US case, the US federal government is a sovereign national government, and its issues are classified in the previous category, whereas issues by the various states are considered as issues by non-sovereign governments. Let's now move on to quasi-government entities that also use bonds as a means of funding. What are quasi-government entities? They are basically agencies created by governments. Despite the fact that they are created by governments, if they get into financial trouble, the government that created them does not necessarily have an obligation to cover the payments they promised to make when they borrowed funds through issuing bonds. Examples of such agencies are the US agencies Federal National Mortgage Association, commonly referred to as Fannie Mae, and the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, commonly referred to as Freddie Mac. In the case of these two, their obligations are not the responsibility of the US government. I will now say something as an aside. It is thus appropriate to drop an aside alert. What I'm about to say is nothing complicated, but if you feel you are getting confused, then just ignore it. Some of you that are maybe more experienced might point out that during the 2008 financial crisis, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac got into financial trouble and were in fact bailed by the US government. That is, the US government stepped in and provided financial assistance to rescue them. So if this is the case, why did I just mention that their obligations are not the responsibility of the US government? I mentioned that because although the US government did indeed bail them, it didn't do it because it had a responsibility to do so. It simply did it because it considered that not helping them would bring further financial instability. And at that point in time, that was a risk the US government and the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the US, were not willing to take. And in reality, the US government bailed them by lending them money that it is now getting back. It didn't just do it with nothing in return. After this aside that hopefully didn't confuse you, let's move on to our final point and mention supranational entities as potential bond issuers as well. Supra is Latin for above, and this covers issues by organizations that operate globally. For example, issues by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund fall into this category. Issues by the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which was recently established, will also fall into this category. Let's continue in the next video.